Okay. I think we're live.
I think so.
You can switch us over. Yeah, there's Alex right there. I see him.
Cool.
All right. Hey, so gosh, man, I've been looking forward to doing this show actually for quite some time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
You bet. So for those of you that are just joining us, or maybe you haven't seen any of the videos that we did or I did yesterday talking about today's show, we're going to be talking about buying a car. And this is actually something I've been looking forward to for many reasons, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But for those of you that are joining the show for the first time, basically, just to kind of give you an idea of what we do here at Consumers Corner, my name is Patrick Mattingly. I consider myself a consumer advocate. What I do is my goal is to help people avoid getting burned by unethical businesses, contractors, whatever the case may be. That's been my goal. I've been doing this now for about 10 years, and I enjoy helping people. We also want to try to educate people on, how to maybe shop for a contractor, or shop for a new car, or shop for an accountant, or the questions to ask to make sure that you get the right person to work with. And then more importantly, what we do is we want to help you if in the event that you've had a problem with a company, or if you've had an issue with a contractor, let us know. You can go to trustpatrick.com and you can file a complaint against a company. You can text us at the show here and tell us your story. You can call in and tell your story live on the show. I mean, as a matter of fact, if you wanted to call in right now, and if you have any questions for Alex during the show here, or myself, you can call in at 866-966-2287. That's 866-966-2287. And ask us your question, and we'll try to help solve your problem on the air. And as a matter of fact, if it has nothing to do with cars, it doesn't matter. We'll get back to cars. Mm-hmm. We'll take your question on the air. And the cool thing is we can get multiple people's opinions. Alex, I'm sure, would have a great opinion about a home improvement project.
Sure.
So, but you can email us at consumerscorner@trustpatrick.com. Just to kind of be upfront, we're still dialing in using this software, and we've got a new producer here, and some of the stuff we're still learning. So if you message us and we don't get it, the best way to call in, or the best way to get our attention, is to call in, and you can even tell Keith, hey, I text you, or I message you. And by the way, if you want to make a comment on social media, if you want to go to Trust Patrick on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, you can make a comment, and Keith will drop your comment into the show, and we'll be able to read it and see it in the whole 9 yards. So pretty cool stuff. So anyway, just to be upfront, I mean, we're kind of getting this thing dialed in. It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
it's a ton of work. We kind of thought we had it dialed in, and then all the things were not correct, and so they came in and upgraded the software, and it just kind of threw us off because we got used to doing it the other way. So now we're like, fish out of water trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah, learn from your mistakes. That's the best way to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we don't have a ton of subscribers,
sure.
We don't have a ton right now, but I suspect we're going to grow. I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll grow, and this video will always be up. People will be able to come back to it and be like, gee, man, I can remember when they were really rusty. The crazy thing I will tell you is that I actually miss this old intro that we have. I don't know if you saw some of our other shows, but it was, we had this like cool rock and roll kind of music, and it went into this, cool intro. I kind of miss that because it kind of gets me fired up.
Sure.
But now I'm not really fired up. I'm just like, hello.
Well, yeah, we're good. Let's get fired up. I'm excited about this.
I got some whiskey here if you want a shot. No, I'm kidding.
I'm good.
No whiskey.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're working right now. I guess we can't.
Yeah. And I got to drive out of here too. So.
Oh, we don't want you drinking and driving. That's for sure. So anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell what we do. And today we're going to be talking about buying a car. And like I said, I was really looking forward to this show because I actually have bought a lot of cars in my lifetime, probably more cars than I think the average person does because of the businesses that I've owned. And I've kind of prided myself in the fact that I got pretty good at buying a car.
Sure.
And I think you do have to, if you're using a dealership, you have to get prepared. And you got to kind of, you got to get your armor on and, your mask, and you got to go in there and you got to be this completely different person. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
I did. As a matter of fact, one quick story. I remember Oh, this has been a long time ago, easily 20 years ago. And I had a little Ford Ranger pickup from my company, and it was time for me to upgrade. And I wanted to get a diesel to pull my boat. Mm-hmm. And, I went into this dealership just kind of looking. I can't remember what it was. I think it was Cherry Creek Dodge maybe. Mm-hmm. And I went into the dealership to just take a look at trucks, And the salesman comes up to me. He's like, "What can we do for you?" And I'm kind of a jerk, to be honest with you. I think a lot of them really think I'm a jerk.
I remember you telling me that one time. Yeah,
because I remember I went into the dealership, and of course, every time I've ever been to a dealership, they say they're like, "So, what kind of payment are you looking to get into?" And I'm just like, that's a secret. Mm-hmm. Because if I tell you something that's higher than what I could get because my credit is actually great or whatever the case may be, you're going to be like, "Oh, well, we couldn't get you that. We had to pump it up $25 or whatever," right? Am I right?
Yeah, and we'll get to that. I think it's a question that for the longest time, and still, I think it's still applicable in many situations, is and I think that comes down to the dynamic of how the process works at a dealership versus how my process works, for example, as a broker.
Right. Which, by the way, you're a broker.
So. Yeah, exactly. And we'll shed light on what the heck that means, because it was a time when I had no idea what that meant. And I worked at a dealership, a very good dealership that had a really great process for the clients. I did that for 2.5 years, and I had no idea what the brokers did.
Right.
But that question, I think, in my opinion, I think when people are recommended not to say what the payment goal is at a dealership, I think it's framed from a standpoint that the dealer knows more than you, and they've got all these moving parts that they're going to use to their advantage to whether they're going to increase the term or the loan or the down payment or the trade-in, and they're just going to kind of do the, I don't know what it's called, where they do the ball under the 3 cups sideshow kind of thing. You know what I mean? And they're like trying to.
That's a great analogy.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of the way it's always been. And for the most part, dealerships, I think, have understood that if they need to stay in business, they need to get better. But there's still stories, man, that I mean, I'm happy to hear it, because it obviously makes my job a little easier to paint the picture. But that stuff still happens. I mean, it's there's a whole slew of things that dealers do that's just like, come on, man, what do you like? We're in 2019. I mean, be better. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So again, just a long-winded way of saying that I think that not when somebody says don't give them your payment, don't show your cards all right away. Again, I think it's all, don't show them excitement about the car. Don't show them, don't tell them you have a trade-in until like the last minute and all that stuff. Yeah. And a lot of that still applies. And I think for sure that it's driven by what the traditional dealership process really entails.
Right.
Which the traditional way, and I think the stigma that the dealership experience has is, again, this is kind of more black and white. There's some gray area, like you can contact the internet department and do whole deals over the phone and that sort of thing. But if you walk into a dealership, you're going to work with a salesperson. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't. The salesperson doesn't make the majority of the decisions on the front end of the deal. When I say front end, that's the price of the car, the price of the trade-in. So that's when you get this back and forth between him and the sales manager, who you may or may not ever meet. So the sales manager sitting in the box there, or the ivory tower, whatever you want to call it. The salesperson's
so
going
cool.
back.
I'm hearing these names for this stuff.
The
box
these are all,
or the ivory tower.
Yeah, so or the fishbowl, whatever you want to call it. The salesperson's going back and forth. So he's getting an understanding where the client wants to be. He's taking that offer back to the sales manager. Sales manager either circles it or crosses it out, writes a new offer on there. Then you go back and forth. So in between all that, that's assuming that the sales manager is even available. He's not working on somebody else's deal or a trade-in. So there's a portion of waiting. The salesperson might go back, talk to him, go out back, smoke a cigarette, whatever, have a bite of his cheeseburger, come back.
Just to make you wait. And I think, that's what I hate about it.
And that's really the thing that, and again, I understand, like I understand that this is kind of like the worst case scenario. And the reason that people are so tentative about buying a car in the first place is that this stuff can't happen, but it still happens. And I think, even if the guys are really good and ethical, there's still a waiting period. Mm-hmm. You have to wait for the sales manager, the sales guy to talk to the sales manager, and you have to wait for the sales manager to actually give him because he's got 3 other things that are going on. Then he has to come back, and then you have to take the offer. Oh, wait, that's not good enough. We're not close enough yet. Then he's got to go back. Oh, but he had to go evaluate a trade, so he's not going to be ready. Okay, great. Then
so some of it's legitimate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some of it can be legitimate, but at the end of the day, there's a waiting period, right? You're waiting there and twiddling your thumbs and wondering, what's going to happen, and you come back. Great. Okay, you've successfully negotiated the price of the trade, the price of the car, and then when you're done, then you have to go in the box with the finance guy, regardless of whether you're paying cash or not. Sure. Because then that's where you get some of the upsells, like extended warranties, and then rate and that sort of thing. He's talking to the banks and that sort of thing. But then you have to wait for him because there's not 16 finance managers in every dealership. Then so there's more waiting in line for that guy. And then once you finally kind of do some numbers with that guy, then he has to get the bank loan approved. If you're financing, of course. You have to wait for the bank to get back to them. And then he says, okay, great, you've been approved, or we're doing some of those things. And then you have to get the paperwork printed. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think the biggest the biggest dilemma with dealerships and what you've started to see a lot is more process-driven decisions. Like a one-price dealer that's a process-driven decision rather than a pricing decision. And if you really think about that, like AutoNation does one price on their used cars. It's all market-driven and based, and it's a no-haggle model, which some people like that, some people don't. But that's designed to take a lot of that front-end process out of there. But then you're still dealing with some of these back-end processes. So again, that's a worst case scenario. And again, I used to work at a dealership that had a very good process. And once somebody decided on a vehicle, we tried to get them out of there within an hour, Sure. Because we understood. It's like, look, we don't want you here all day. If we're freed up as a salesperson to help more people, that helps us, sell more. So we don't really want somebody to be there 6 to 7 hours. It doesn't look good on anybody, but it does happen.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really, I think, a lot of that waiting. And it can be a knockdown drag out, so that by the end of the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, you'll say yes to anything just to get the heck out of there. Yeah.
And how much of that is by design?
Well, that's exactly the point. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think there's some. I don't want to talk badly and make blanket statements. I think there's dealers out there that really do a good job because they have to, and they know that they have to evolve with the times. But for the most part, that still is ingrained in society and people's minds that process is like, oh God, I got to go buy a new car.
Yeah.
Here we go. Talking about whiskey. You know what I mean? So that's, for the most part, people, unless someone like someone like yourself, you're confident and well-versed in the process and know how to deal with it, it's still something in the back of your mind. It's like, all right, let's take a deep breath, put on my different big boy pants and
do a shot of whiskey.
Do a shot of whiskey and go in there. So,
but not too much whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. Because then your judgment goes away. Then you're making bad decisions anyway.
No doubt. So what's funny is like I say, I know that there's some salesmen out there that are like, man, that guy is a jerk. Because I was. Yeah. I was really a jerk because I didn't want to deal with it. Sure. I was telling you about the one guy. People would come up and say, well, how much of a payment are you looking to get into? Which I felt was, we're so early in the game. Yeah. Like you say, you don't lay all your cards out on the table. And I remember was sponsoring. Well, I was thinking like $10 a month, and I was like, well, you got to be realistic. Well, you asked. Yeah. You asked. That was the question. Yeah. But this guy with this, I bought this Dodge turbo diesel truck, and when he talked to me, I said, well, I've got a trade in, and obviously you're not going to negotiate with me here. And he's like, no, we will do that. I said, okay. He goes, well, tell me about your truck. And so we went back and forth, and I ended up spending more time there than I wanted, and I didn't anticipate on buying it that day. But the bottom line is we made the deal. I went and got my truck and brought it back in, and they didn't know that I could see them because they were around a corner, and I happened to go to the bathroom or something. I don't remember what it was, but the sales manager was livid. Like he was so mad. I could hear him. He's like, "We got screwed on this deal," And I actually kind of got a little pleasure out of that, right? Right. And then I can tell you another time, a friend of mine was looking for a car, and she was like, "I don't know what to do," and I just felt like, man, I can't let this poor girl go into this dealership by herself. Yeah, that's like throwing a chicken into a pack of greyhounds in a cage, or
Right.
or lions. And
Right.
so I went with her, and she had obviously perfect credit, and she had money down, and she knew what she wanted. So I
Sure.
kind of helped her, and we figured out the price of the car,
Yep.
what her payment needed to be. We got it all figured out mathematically what we had. We went to the dealership, and we didn't want to be there all day. And I told the guy, I said, look, this is exactly what I said. I said, here's the deal. I said, she wants that Jeep, and we are buying a Jeep today, and you give me your best price on that Jeep, and if it meets what we want to do, we'll move a little bit, but
Sure.
if it meets our numbers, we'll walk out of that with that Jeep today,
Sure.
like right now.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, okay. And he couldn't find the keys, and we were waiting around, and the guy comes up and he goes, man, I'm trying to find the keys. And I'm like, dude, you got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're moving on to another dealership. And the
Right.
guy looked at me and he was like, well, I'm trying to find the key. I
Yeah.
could tell he was like, man, you're a jerk. But anyway, then we sat down, and when they came to us with the number, before they did, I said to him, I said, hey, listen, here's the deal. I said, I don't want to be here all day. I'm not going to, do this back and forth stuff. So you give me your best price, period. I want your best price. And if it's not your best price, I'm walking. I'm not even going to negotiate with you. I'm leaving.
Right.
And the guy was like, okay. So then he comes back to me and he goes, man, listen, don't be so hard on me, dude. He's like, I got to do this at least once with my sales manager. I
Right.
can't give you my best price the first time. So will you just give me this one time? And I was like, dude, I told you, I'm not going to sit here all day. But then he was like, seriously, he was pretty, like, almost appealing to me, like, dude, seriously, please don't do this. And I was like, okay, go ahead. So he gives me the time. I'm like, nope, not going to work. Go back. And then he came back the second time. He's like, man, I'm telling you, and I know you're not going to be happy, and we did haggle a little bit, but I was like, okay, if you don't come back with the right price, I'm done. I'm done this time.
Yeah.
And they came back, perfect price. She signed the paperwork, and we got the car. It was pretty cool.
Yep.
So,
and that's the thing. It's like, it's hard not to get emotional about a big purchase like this. And it's kind of a reality that you may actually end up spending, even if you buy one car, you may end up spending more money on that car than you ever will even on a house because of appreciation versus depreciation, that sort of thing, right?
Sure.
So it's especially in the dealership world, if you can let go of a lot of the emotion and use your feet as the best negotiating tool that you have at your disposal, meaning get up there and walk away. There's nobody's handcuffing you to the thing unless they, quote unquote, for those of you on the podcast, I'm doing air quotes, lose your keys, which they do. And he was talking about losing the not finding the car keys, which can happen, but losing your trade keys to keep you there. Oh, I don't know where your license went when I went to go make a copy. I mean,
that's crazy.
I know. And, it sounds funny and comical, but those are the things that still happen.
That's fascinating to me.
It is. And again, I operate on such a different spectrum that it's like, maybe I'm a little naive that stuff still happens. When I hear it, I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, it's so funny because, that was the other thing I told this gal. I'm like, look, here's the deal. Don't fall in love with any car. And don't ever let the salesman know that you are in love with that car.
Right.
Because the minute that they do, they're
going to say yes to
yeah,
anything and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
I told her, I said, don't just whatever you do, don't fall in love with it because there's 100 other ones of the same model, out there.
Yeah, unless you're looking for something specific, and but if there's, like you said, if there's 6 or 7 other ones out there, or doesn't, whatever it is, you've got your options. And so I think ultimately as well, it comes down to time versus money, right? It's like time. The time that you invest in there to get another couple $100 off the deal, some people don't see that as worth it. And that, again, that comes down to consumer preferences and what type of buyer it is. And then, a thought that I had is when you're saying you got to get geared up to go to the dealer and buy a car, it's because that the process is not going to be ideal, that they're going to try to put you through the ringer and all that stuff. So. And you knew what to expect, right?
Yeah. You
sat there and you're like, look, I want to minimize this brain damage as much as possible. And I'm telling you what you need to do to accomplish that.
Yeah.
So you're just laying it out in the road because and you're still, and you're well versed in it. And you're still like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my day.
Yeah.
So I think that's the low hanging fruit from a broker standpoint. And that's one thing that it took me a little bit to really understand is, again, the dealership that I worked at had a much more seamless process. Everybody was actually a finance manager as well as the salesperson, so we could do a little bit more A to Z, and it was a little bit more seamless. But even then, when I heard about these brokers, I was like, are they a little hole in the wall? Are they next to Casa Bonita? I mean, we're in here, for those of you who know what Casa Bonita is in Colorado, it's a little, are they shopping mall like next to Better Call Saul tax,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I thought brokers were.
Yeah.
So I actually left the dealership.
Another good analogy.
Yeah,
That was perfect.
yeah.
Because, who hasn't seen Breaking Bad?
Yeah, exactly. So, you can picture the shopping mall that Better Call, that Saul was in. I mean, that's exactly what I had in my mind. Come to find out, it's a little different than that. It's a big business in Colorado.
So tell me real quick, how long have you been in the car business?
So
Total.
I did 2.5, about 6.5 years, 2.5 of which was at the dealership. So I've been doing the broker side of things for a little over 4 years.
A little 4 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you investigate becoming a broker? Is that how you
did,
learned
and I'll
about
tell you.
them?
So I left the dealership. I actually missed my quota by like 4 cars, and they sent me packing, and it was, I understood. It's a business decision. It's, it was in black and white. I don't hold a grudge against them, and
Oh, I would.
Yeah, well, it's,
I have a big ego. I'm sorry.
Well, I get it, but I was like, I kind of get my life back because it's nights, holidays, weekends, it's retail. You know what I mean?
Can't
So,
imagine.
I didn't ever think I was going to go back to selling cars, and I'm super passionate about cars. I've got a manual transmission tattoo on my arm, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? So it's like that's pretty.
Oh, we got to see this.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
Go Incredible Hulk here.
It's on your chest?
No, it's on the inside of my arm, so a little
Just
bit
kidding.
less accessible. It's on my social media, which I'll give you guys if you want to check it out. But so I actually worked in a couple other industries in between when I left the dealer and then when I became a broker. And about a year after I left the dealership, I was back in the market for a car. And again, I worked at a dealership for 2.5 years, and I had no interest in going to a dealership to buy a car.
Sure.
Zero interest. And then somebody else that I knew had become a broker the year prior. And I said, you know what? I don't know how this works. I don't care. I'm going to call him and get this figured out. So I called, granted, I knew the car that I wanted. There was one left. I didn't even contact the dealer. I just called my buddy. I'm like, hey, can you get this car? He's like, oh yeah, here, I'll send you a credit app. You leasing? Okay, great. Yeah. So I sent him all the information on Monday. I was approved by Tuesday, and on Wednesday I'm picking up my car. I did maybe 37 minutes of work, including signing the paperwork in the car, which I'd never test driven. I just knew it's the one I wanted. And we're sitting there, and I'm writing. I'm signing the documents, and we're kind of wrapping up. And I'm like, all right, man, how does this work? What do I owe you? I was ready to write him a check for $500 to $1,000. That's what my time was worth. Like, I didn't care. I'm like, great, you got me the lease I'm looking for. Like, this is, you actually saved me a couple bucks under what I thought I had to, you know what I mean? So my expectations were set accordingly, and he exceeded them. And I was ready to write him what I thought was his broker fee.
Oh, wow.
And he says, no, I'm good. I'm all set. The dealer pays me. And my head was like, what? I was
Really?
like, oh, what? He's like, no, man, this is how this works. The dealer pays me on these new cars. You don't pay me a dime. We're all good. I'm already taken care of. It's already baked into the cake. And I'm like, holy cow. 6 months later, I was at my desk at the brokerage.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
That's a great story.
Yeah, so I'm a product and a client of the process. So I really believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. To that point, I'm a former dealership salesperson. Very grateful for the experience because it formed a lot of, it gave me a lot of great experience and things that I was able to take into the brokerage side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the lifestyle that it offered wasn't something that was appealing to me anymore. So one of the bigger things that drew me to being a broker was the autonomy, right? Think about it like, a realtor, a mortgage lender, an insurance broker. For the most part, you're building your own book of business. Any salesperson is building their own book of business.
Sure.
It's really how the company allows you to do that, that differs. And it just so happens that H.M. Brown and Associates, the brokerage that I'm with, has been around since 1986.
No kidding. 86.
86, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Bud Brown started the company He worked at a dealership for 18 months, hated it because, I mean, think back in the 80s before the internet, how ruthless it was.
Oh yeah,
you know,
it was
that's
way worse
way
than
worse.
what I was
You know what I
talking
mean?
about.
So he hated it. So he started this company and actually went into the dealership with his clients, sat there across the desk and negotiated, and then they would pay him a fee. That's how it started, but that's not what it's evolved into.
Wow.
So he started it simply as an alternative to the traditional dealership buying process.
Interesting.
And on new cars, that's the only way to buy a new car is at a dealership unless you're buying a Tesla.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Tesla doesn't have a dealership model.
Okay.
They just kind of take that middleman out of the process, so to speak.
Gotcha.
You know, used cars, I mean, there's Carvana, there's Craigslist, there's Blinker, there's Let Go. I mean, there's a jillion different ways now to buy and sell used cars. And that's still something that I do regularly.
So you don't deal with just new cars or leases?
Correct. Yeah, we do new and used. I take trade-ins, so I can shed a little light on how that works as a broker. Leasing, financing, refinancing, cash purchases, accessories, and it's really tied to, and the reason I'm able to do all that is because, one, we've been in business for so long and our reputation, but the network of dealers and resources and inventory and accessories and partners in this business that allow us to do what we do, they see the value in using us as an extension of their sales force.
Sure.
You know, that's really what
Makes
a broker
sense.
does.
Are there dealers that don't want to work with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Can you name them? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, they're out there. They're out there for sure, which is fine. I mean, we have and still continue to operate with the partners that we have. We just had a sales meeting this morning, and the GM and about 6 of their fleet managers, which is who we work with. So I don't go and talk to a sales person.
Right.
I have a direct fleet contact whose primary business is to earn my business.
Gotcha.
And the reason that happens is that we sell 400 cars a month as a business. That puts us in the top, 5-10% of all dealerships in the entire state. So it gives us a tremendous amount of leverage and buying power.
Sure.
And today, when margins are squeezed so much, dealerships are more and more reliant on volume, hitting volume targets versus, just making straight gross profit on. And it depends on the business model of the dealership, but that's really where we come in, is we help them achieve these volume targets as long as they give us service and they make it convenient for us. The more convenient and better service they can provide to us, the better and more quick we can be with our clients. And that's really at the end goal is to make the process and the experience better than they've ever had when buying a car.
Okay.
With the client.
So the reason why someone would use a broker versus going to the dealership is that you basically you negotiate the terms and the deal for them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of that stuff's essentially pre-negotiated. I mean, essentially we're buying in bulk, so we have pre-negotiated terms, and that's really so. Another analogy that I want to use is, don't look at us so much like a real estate broker where that's the sales price and then you're paying a percentage off of that. It used to be that way. But we're more of like a fix and flipper. So we're buying inventory at a wholesale rate and putting in a little bit of profit. But at the end of the day, the market is already determined. I mean, you've got the internet. Everybody knows they're about what range they should be at. And my goal is to be at or below whatever that market range is.
But you guys don't stock vehicles on your lot, right?
We do, actually.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we have a small inventory, maybe 100, 120 used cars at any given time.
I see.
So we broker the new cars and used cars when necessary. But we have 100 to 120 used vehicles that are
cool, well
reconditioned, and we try not to cut any corners on that front either. And that's a whole other. I mean, we could spend a freaking hour on used cars.
Yeah. Well, we'll do another show for sure.
Yeah.
For sure, because I think that, I want to help educate people on this stuff as much as I possibly can, because I know that everyone out there is not like me.
Right.
When they go to negotiate. I mean, my brother, like every time he's talked about buying a car, if he's watching right now, you love your little brother. No. He called me last time. He's like, well, I want to get this truck. And I'm like, okay, so here's a couple of things. Number one, don't get emotionally involved in the truck. You know, and so I went through this list of things with him. And next thing you know, he's like, well, will you give me a hand? He ended up going to CarMax. This was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess a couple of things is these no haggle deals.
Yep.
Even though I don't want to haggle, it still makes me a little bit more nervous.
Yeah, and
you know
I think and totally, and where that no haggle model really makes sense is if it wouldn't be possible without the internet, in my opinion.
Sure.
Because you have to, everything's market driven.
Sure.
Right. If everybody's buying a car for $20,000, you don't want to buy that car for 25. Right. Unless it's got gold seats or something weird. Yeah. Right. You know. So everything, it's all the way back to the real estate side of things, right? Anytime that you're shopping for houses, you're looking at comps, right? You want to look at, if you're looking at a 3-bed, 2-bath ranch style house, you're going to look at other 3-bed, 2-bath ranch style houses to get a sense of the market. And that's my biggest recommendation when shopping for used cars in particular, is to get an idea of what the market range is for that particular vehicle. Mm-hmm. And you do that by going to Auto Trader, cars.com. And people are doing this anyway. And they look for the 2014 Hyundai Tucson, whatever it is you're looking for. They list it by, they pick maybe the trim level they want, SE, limited, whatever. And then they list them price low to high. And they look at all the ones that are priced low, right? Because dealerships have to, that's a big source of marketing for dealerships, is how they list their inventory online. So they don't want to be off the market by listing it way too high, because it's kind of like searching for something on Google. You're only going to look at the first 2 hits, right? Mm-hmm. So the first few that pop up there are the ones that you're going to click on and make sure that they have good Carfaxes and all that sort of stuff. So that's the market for the car. Kelley Blue Book, NADA, Edmunds, all these rating systems are guides. They're good guides, but they're not the gospel. And I think that is a recommendation that I can make that I think people get in trouble with, is putting too much faith in those rating guides. And I understand, right? I'm in the business, and it's easy to be skeptical of the words that are coming out of my mouth, right? I get that. But the reason that I don't put that much faith in them is that historically, I'm more surprised when the prices line up, frankly. And the reason for that is that Kelley Blue Book and NADA and all those, they react and use past data to form those, they use great algorithms. They look at auction prices and current purchases and all that stuff, but it's all reactionary. It doesn't set the market, it reacts to the market. So that's the primary reason that it's not as reliable as people make it out to be. Again, they're very good guides, but it's not the end all be all. What I typically recommend is, if you're looking for a used car and you want to make sure that the price is on point, hopefully there's 5 or 6, 7 other comparable vehicles within your marketplace, and do a 200, 300 mile radius just to see what are they selling for with the mileage that you're looking for. Similar to buying a house. And that's how I determine whether there's a good value. If I'm looking for a used car for a client, that's how I determine whether the value is good or not. Because if this car realistically is a $28,000 vehicle based on the other 6 that are in the marketplace, and I could sell it to my client for $27,500, they're getting a great value. But again, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that the experience is commensurate and exceeds their expectations from that point, because they're so used to this other potential pitfall by going to through the dealership process.
Sure. It's funny too, because I think the other thing is, I'm so amped up and prepared for this battle when I go to a dealership, and then you come along and you're like, hey, you don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean I don't have to worry about that anymore? It's kind of weird.
Totally.
And I think that there's a lot of faith and trust in the broker. Would you
without
agree?
a doubt. Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
So how let me ask you this. How would a person, just like in any industry out there are good brokers. And then there are bad brokers. Yep. So how do you know that you're dealing with a broker that's being honest and truthful, and they're going to really truly get you the best deal? How do you know?
So the way that I try to do that is just having a conversation with people from the get-go. And I think one of the things that I try to do primarily is, again, going back to what I thought about brokers was the little hole in the wall kind of shopping center deals is we have a very nice office that doesn't look anything like a dealership. The office is nice. There's a cube farm. There's outside offices.
There's not a fishbowl.
Correct. So knowing that, I want to actually set an initial appointment with my clients at my office, because I think that helps to paint the picture that, look, we're not like your traditional dealership experience. And then I don't want somebody to make a buying decision, like they're not leaving with a car that day. That initial meeting is going to be 30 to 60 minutes. 15 to 20 of that is me taking a look at their trade. So during that, I'm just asking absolutely as many questions as I can to get an understanding of what their situation is, including what their budget is and what monthly payment they're targeting. Because rather than trying to shoehorn them into a car that they're looking for, I get an understanding of what they're really looking to accomplish, what kind of car they're looking at. Is it an SUV, a car? How many kids do they have? Do they have pets? Do they go skiing here in Colorado? How are they using the car? Are they towing anything? So I really get granular on that. And I think that builds a lot of value for people. As with any sales process, the more questions you ask, the more that you can engage the client and get an understanding, because then they feel like they're being listened to.
Sure.
Rather than like, oh, okay, all right. All right, okay. All right, let's find a way to shoehorn you into this car.
Right.
And it's all about rapid. So
right.
I try to.
They want to close the deal that day.
Yeah,
and that's what they teach you at the dealership, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the weakest closes that in my it's weak depending on the person, but I think it's the question that people dread is, what can I do to get you into this car today, or how can I earn your business today?
Yeah.
And sometimes people aren't ready to make that decision.
Right.
I
agree with you. It's so funny that you say that, because, I've been in construction for 30 plus years. Mm-hmm. And most of the time that I've been in construction, I've been in sales. And I try to teach a lot of our members, I actually tell them, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do sales, but I don't teach them sales tactics, right?
Yeah.
I teach them how to consult, and I teach them how to, basically do consultative selling and talking to them and helping them solve their problems rather than selling them that day. And it's so funny because I've been in sales pretty much my whole life, in the construction side and experience in all of it. But the bottom line is that there are so many times I hear people say, nice guys finish last, and I'm like, okay, whatever. You go ahead and you close your deals, and at night when, you're with your family and you feel bad because you put somebody into something that they shouldn't have, and you can't sleep, I'll be at home sleeping very comfortably because I don't do that kind of stuff. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, like I've had construction companies tell me, hey, go knock on doors. We're in the area and let's see if we can get some more business. I'm like, that's just not me.
Right.
If you want someone like that, you need to hire someone like that. I'm the type of guy that, when I'm out doing, estimating in construction, I lay the cards out on the table and I just say, hey, look, I want to help you, and maybe the slick guy that comes in and closes them is going to get the deal. But I think people realize that I'm not trying to pressure them. And I think that's super important in the car business as well.
Yeah. And it comes down to, I think, a short-term mindset versus a long-term mindset. It's getting the sale, and maybe you'll never see that person again.
Yeah. So it's the saying, you can skin a sheep once or you can shear it for life, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that lends to my mentality when I'm working with clients, because I'm not limited. Like if they're looking at a Subaru now and they switch over to a Honda or Toyota next time, which doesn't usually happen because Subaru clients are usually pretty loyal.
Yeah, I have Toyota. I'm never switching.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I'm not limited, and I'm not going to try to sell them on why the RAV4 is better than the Subaru Forester. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's about the process, and it's funny, and hopefully this comes across the right way. I mean, the cars are just widgets.
Sure.
In my opinion, what you're really getting by working with the broker in H&M Brown is a process. You're essentially getting access to time and resources.
Sure.
Because the alternative can be lengthy. You've got to carve out nights and weekends.
You may come out of it not in a good position, right?
How do you mean?
Not you, but I mean a dealership. So you are saving a person time, and what else did you say?
Yeah, I'm saving them time for sure, and access to resources.
Okay.
I mean, I have almost all I do all the makes and models at my fingertips versus the alternative. Let's say you're shopping for a Mazda, a Toyota, and a Honda. You know, that necessitates 3 different trips to 3 different dealers.
Sure.
Over a longer period of time. And that's the beauty of what I can do is I can literally bring one of each of those vehicles, line them right up next to each other in the parking lot outside my office. You test drive them back to back to back. So, I mean, that's a huge time saving right there. I don't know other than a huge.
That's actually a pretty good point.
Yeah, other than a big, a big conglomerate dealer, one of these big megaplex auto plazas that have multiple, maybe they have the brands that you're looking at, and you can do that in one fell swoop. Short of that, I don't know where else you can get that access to vehicles.
And do you negotiate the best price? I mean,
we have to be price competitive. We absolutely have to, and we leverage our buying power to meet that end. And we can do every single aspect of the purchase. Whether it's leasing or financing, we have access to all the manufacturers' rebates and programs. We have access to credit unions, big banks, small banks, on the financing side. So, in addition to, again, if the manufacturer's running a 0.9% APR to 60 months, you get access to that. You don't lose that by going through a broker. You don't lose warranty. You don't lose all that. So I look at it like big picture. I think another thing that I think it can do people a disservice sometimes is only focusing on one aspect of the deal. And I think this comes back to the analogy I made with the ball under the 3 cups, the street guy. If you're focused completely on whatever trade value you can get, or focused completely on the price of the vehicle, it's kind of like going to a restaurant. And again, if you're paying cash, of course, the price of the vehicle and there's no trade, that's the only element of the transaction and makes it the most important element of the transaction. But if you have a trade-in, you're financing, you're buying a new vehicle, comparing it to a used, there's multiple angles there, and they're all profit centers for a car purchase. So, they could give you a smoking deal on the new car, even lose money on the new car, but they're hosing you on the trade-in.
Gotcha.
Or vice versa. You know what I mean? And it's
and
really,
you're talking about a dealership.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a broker that's not such an
correct.
upfront
Yeah,
person.
the broker has same exact thing. I mean, they're all profit centers for any entity in the business of selling cars. So I look at it big picture. And here's a perfect example. I want to be very upfront about this. I helped the parents of a really good client of mine. They were in the market for an SUV, right? It was a Toyota. They were getting out of a 15-year-old Toyota and into a new one. They had been to the dealership, managed to walk out of there with a printout of the offer that they gave him. And my client was like, I don't really like this. I'm like, well, here are the things that we can improve on here. So I was actually $500 more expensive on the car that they were buying, but I was $2,000 better on the trade-in, and I got them 1 point better on the financing offer that they got. So the entire package was, as a whole, even though I was more expensive on the price of the car, the entire transaction as a whole was over $2,000 more attractive by going through me, simply because I knew where to maximize and present a better value proposition to the client. So I think if they had been strictly focused on the trade and had blinders on or tunnel vision on the price of the car, Alex is $500 more expensive, we don't want to use him. And I don't want people to, and that's, and every deal's different, right?
Right.
There's many times where people don't even, I wouldn't recommend going to a dealership first, because again, my whole thing is about saving time. That was the deal they would get anyway. I didn't have to compare it or crush the dealership's numbers. Right. I just knew that was my barometer, and I just was like, oh man, there's a lot more room for improvement here.
It's funny that you say too, if a person is just focused on one thing. I think that dealers probably use that to their advantage, because
Absolutely.
they hold this picture of, here's the thing you want. We're going to do all these little secrets
That's
right
exactly
behind you.
right.
They keep you focused on this while they're negotiating and doing other things on the other end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huh.
So
You can also do leases.
Yeah. And again, the lease versus buy equation is a conversation and discussion is something that we could probably spend hours on.
Okay.
But I'm a big fan of leasing, and I think it does people more of a service than they realize.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I will say is whether you lease or buy, there's no right or wrong. Everybody's situation is different. Leasing works better for some people's situation, and a buy might be better. A cash purchase might be better. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it all depends on what they're trying to accomplish.
I love leasing.
Yeah. And leasing,
I do.
Yeah. Leasing, I think the term that I don't know that I coined it, but I liked actually I know for sure I didn't coin it. I've just used it effectively is leasing exacts your cost of usage on the car.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because the future trade value is guaranteed by the leasing company or the manufacturer. So that's one thing that's out of there. So that's your depreciation is already predetermined by the manufacturer, regardless of what happens in the market.
Right.
So that depreciation is already baked into your payment based on how many miles you're buying, right? You know what the sales price is from the get-go. So essentially it's like paying cash for a car, knowing what your trade-in value is in the future, and you're financing the difference.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
What the pitfalls that I think people get into and the horror stories that happen are, one, you don't buy enough miles. I think there's a stigma with leasing that, I drive too many miles for leasing. When, I mean, the fact is most leases I can write up to 100,000 miles total allowance.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I was just talking to Christy the other day, and my lease, it's 15 cents a mile. Mm-hmm. She was like, well, you should maybe drive my car instead. And I said, if I go 10,000 miles over on my lease, I give them $1,500.
Yeah.
It's $1,500.
Right.
You know, it's so little money.
Right. And you know that from the get-go. You know exactly what your penalty is going to be. I think what happens is people get into the lease. The attractive thing about a lease, in my opinion, and the reason I recommend it a lot is you can get a brand new vehicle with a lower payment than because if you're financing the whole chunk, you're paying for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, if you're putting money down or not, you're financing whatever that is. With the lease, you're financing a portion of the vehicle's value based on how much you're going to use it. And that's why the lease payment is lower. But the bigger advantage of that is that it's a new car, so it's under warranty.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is Christy even said something too. She said something about, do you really like leasing because you never pay it off? And I'm like, okay, so the last car a couple cars ago, I drove it until it had, 150,000 miles on it, and I paid it off, right? Yep. And it got to a point where I was actually coming back from the mountains and it started to overheat. Yeah. And then I had issues with this and I had issues with that. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to drive around going, okay, anytime now I'm going to be breaking down.
We call that the variable payment plan.
Yeah, that's
right?
That's a great one.
Yeah.
And I just realized, even if I can't, like, I paid it off, but it was like, okay, so I have a car that's worth like $5,000 now. Right. Big deal.
Right.
And I have this worry that every time I go someplace, it's going to break down. I don't want to deal with a breakdown.
Yeah.
So it was nice having no payment, but the reality is I love the comfort of knowing that I can drive somewhere. I mean, for the most part, 99.9%, and not have to worry about breaking down.
Right. And if it does, you don't have to come out of pocket for that fix.
Exactly. I can just call somebody and say, come and fix this,
I did. That really reframed that exact experience with a 150, 180,000 mile Subaru of all things. Reframed my experience on leasing as well. Because I leased my first two cars. I have a twin brother, so we were able to, get, split the payments and get a, brand new vehicle in high school and college, and under what people are normally paying. Blah blah blah. Right. But like Christy said, I'm like, gosh, I'm paying all this money. I'm not saying I don't have anything to show for it. Right. Very common thing that people say. I don't have anything to show for it. So I ended up buying a car, Subaru. Had 135,000 miles on it when I bought it. I bought it for $7,000 cash. I drove it 50,000 miles or so, and I sold it for $4,000. And I put I can't remember what the number was, like $2,000 or $3,000 in it in 2.5 years, just maintenance, repairs, and that sort of thing. I did the math. That car cost me $200 to $230 a month to own in maintenance, repairs, and depreciation, and I paid cash for it. So the money's coming out of your pocket one way or the other. It's just how you know, the holy grail of used car ownership is it's a car that's paid off and it doesn't nickel and dime you, but at some point it will.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So there's this allure of the zero car payment, but at some point that allure is going to start tipping the other way. So with a lease, yeah, you do pay a little bit of a premium for that privilege and that not having to shell out $750 for a radiator, $400 for brakes, or whatever it is. But you know, that's a reason that, you know, my wife and I have been leasing our cars. I actually bought mine out because I love it. But and I wanted to hang on to it for longer, which you can do. But not to belabor the point, that's, I think, the biggest attraction for leasing, in my opinion, is you can basically roll the majority of car ownership costs into one payment.
Well, and I think there's many advantages if a person owns their own business.
That's true in the wonderful state of Colorado and many others. Again, we're still kind of holding out. We're not quite sure what the new tax code is going to hold, but for the most part, you should be able to write off that lease payment if you own your own business.
Yeah. The
And
bookkeeper.
Again,
my bookkeeper.
Disclaimer, I'm not a tax professional.
Right. Yeah. My bookkeeper was like, so do you own your truck or lease it? I go, lease it. She goes like, oh, perfect. So you just put it over in the business category.
Right.
I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Another advantage of doing that.
Yeah.
And you can write off depreciation if you're if you own the vehicle, but again, not a tax professional, but that's another advantage of leasing potentially.
Sure.
Yep.
So let's kind of summarize what we've talked about a little bit. So if there's somebody out there, number one, that's looking at buying a new car, whether it's used or new, or leasing a car, why would they use a broker? What's the just give me the flyby.
I think the biggest reason is that most people are not well versed in how to buy a car.
Sure.
And you add on the fact that there's this potential stressful process behind reaching your goal at a dealership, or again, if you're going to Craigslist, you're buying a car at Carvana or Vroom or whatever. There's different avenues there. But if you have to go to a dealership to buy a car, there's that trepidation and fear of having to go through that process.
Right. And walk out. I mean,
potentially worse off.
Yeah, worse off than
Right. So what I tell my clients from the get-go, and this is based on my own experience, is the process and the experience is going to be so much better than you could have imagined, but you won't know that until you go through the process. And my goal every time is end goal is to gain a client for life. How do I do that? I do that by giving them a great experience and giving them fair value on every part of the transaction.
Sure.
So that's the foundation that really holds me to the whole broker thing. Like, I have to deliver on that. Otherwise I'm never going to see that client again. Versus at a dealer, when I was there, it was again, I consider myself one of the good guys, but again, it was like volume. Okay, get him out, work on the next one. It's like, can I just slow down? I just want to, maybe shake my client's hand.
Sure. Well, I'm sure that when a salesperson leaves and somebody comes back and says, I looked at my last deal, that was a sham. They probably blame the sales guy that's no longer there, right?
Yeah,
because it's not the dealership's fault.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So that's one thing that I really I know I can deliver on every time is to give my clients a really, really, really great and thorough experience and make sure that they're making the right decision on that. So
so you advocate on the behalf of your client.
Oh, without a doubt. And I have to.
Yeah.
I have to. I mean, there's a 30+ year reputation in H.M. Brown that I have to hold to.
Sure.
And there's a culture in the company that really realizes that. So everybody's 100% commission. You have to build your own book of business. You don't do that by just turning and burning and just getting a sale. You really have to build your book of business through repeat and referral. As a company, we're 93% repeat and referral.
Wow. That's impressive.
Which is, any business. We don't have any complaints with the Better Business Bureau.
Yeah, I noticed that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
we looked at that. We checked you out thoroughly.
Exactly.
We looked at you on the FBI list.
Except for that one thing in college. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, that came up, but we just figured, hey, we all go through it at one point or another.
Right.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. And that's that there's all these things that really tie into really focusing on giving a great client experience.
Sure.
And you can get that again, guys. I'm not trying to, say that what we do doesn't work for everybody either.
Sure.
You know what I mean? If you're a client that relishes pitting 5 to 6 to 7 different dealerships against each other in order to get the best price, there's no right or wrong in that either. That's a good tactic to do as well. Sure. It's just, if you're including me on that, then we're just double dipping, and I'm not really adding additional value to that, because I can circumvent all of that and get to the same value that you're getting.
Sure. But
there are people that put value in the process there, and that's okay. We don't have to work together. It's just that's an easy one for me to say, because
sure.
Somebody like that wouldn't necessarily see value, because they're like, no, I want to do it.
Right.
I want to do what you're doing, and that's how I bought all my cars, so
right.
I don't really need you, and that's okay. That's
yeah.
totally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So to summarize again, they would use you because they're going to save time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have a much better experience
yep.
than they would if they went to a dealership.
Yep.
Like you said that you it was like a 2-day or 3-day process, and you were
mm-hmm.
in your car and you didn't have to go through all the headaches.
Yeah.
And that's what it sounds like. So
yeah.
now, and here's the other thing that I wanted to mention too. We talked about this on the phone, and that is that I'm sure there are people that are watching. They're like, well, where's Alex from? And he's from Denver. Oh, shoot, I can't use him. And that's not true.
Yeah, that's not really true. I mean, we've, as a company over the last 30 plus years, have helped people in 48 states and 6 countries. I mean, the first vehicle I ever helped a client with was my in-laws in Utah.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So we utilize our local resources. And again, the big benefit of going with a company like mine is not that I call a dealership on your behalf and hammer them down. That was my initial perception, and it's understandable that might be the perception. Where we come into play is really connecting the dots by the relationships that we've already built. So if I can access and utilize my local network to deliver a competitive advantage to what somebody might have in Louisiana or New Jersey or whatever, I still may have to ship the car out there, but if I can deliver and be better than what you have locally, then and still save you all the time and the hassle, I can still
and possibly money. I mean,
exactly,
we talked about
exactly,
that. Yeah.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I delivered a car to somebody in New Jersey.
Really,
it was a Subaru, and I gave him the. I mean, for the most part, it's I can literally sell a car to anybody in the country.
So when you say H.M. Brown around the country, there's only one office in Denver?
That's correct. We have our main headquarters are just south of Denver in Centennial, Colorado. And then we have a satellite office in Castle Rock and another satellite office in Colorado Springs, just so we can kind of get that.
But no other states?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So if somebody wants to, if they're watching the show and they're like, I only trust people that Patrick recommends, which happens a lot,
mm-hmm.
you would be surprised.
That's the goal.
I get people that call me and say,
sure.
I only want to use somebody that you recommend.
Yep.
And so they can use you. It doesn't matter what state they're in.
Absolutely.
They're going to call you. You're going to help them with the whole deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, speaking of New Jersey, I just got a call from the old rodeo of a college roommate who had already contacted dealers and was kind of in a lease situation that he needed some help on. But he had a trade in, and logistically it makes it a little bit more difficult for me to be involved just because there's not delving into that. But I spent 45 minutes on the phone with him, filling in the gaps that he needed to know in order to successfully do this on his own. So I wasn't going to be able to call the dealership that he had contacted because I don't have a relationship with them.
Right.
That's a hill. So from a value standpoint, again, that doesn't make me any money, but I don't care. I'm still, I know more than a lot of people about the car buying process. So I was like, listen, you're doing well here. They're actually, they could be a little bit better here, right here. And like, if you can get a printout, just send it to me. So that's, worst case, you're going to get some clarity and some knowledge on what kind of situation you're doing. I'm more than happy to do that.
That's awesome.
With anybody.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to mention too, I hope you don't mind me kind of going off the
Not
car
at all.
deal for just a second, but I do want companies to know that we have a referral list. You're on the referral
mm-hmm.
list. We checked you out. We put you on the referral list. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they can either call you directly or they can go to trustpatrick.com, go to automobiles, go to brokers.
Yep.
You put a request in and, you're going to get connected with Alex in Denver. Now, if you're out of state or you're more than 50 miles outside of Denver, then you would want to contact Alex directly and they can contact you how?
Just call my cell phone, 720-202-6689. Or email akenyon@hmbrown.com.
Okay, we'll put that in the link.
Put
in the
show
YouTube
notes
video.
Yep.
Yeah, and wherever else we post
Cool.
it. So, yeah, they can get in contact with you directly. And what I wanted to say is, I had a company out of Chicago. The guy, tried to sign up on the site, and look, we're in beta phase. I get it. I can tell you the things that have to work, but all the little pieces and parts that don't work quite properly. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we'll help you get through it, and we'll recommend you. And if you're a good company, we'll put you on the referral list, and we will recommend you to people that want to know. Just like if somebody called me from New Jersey and said, "Hey, I want to be a broker on your site," we're going to check them out just as thoroughly as we did you and everyone else. So.
Sure.
But I really wanted to just get across that, hey, everything, the site's not perfect, but if you have an issue, do me a favor, please email us, or contact us or call us and let us know what's going on so we can fix it. That's the only way to fix something as big as our website really is. It's a monstrosity.
Right.
It's huge. I mean,
Sure.
it's really seriously a very big undertaking, and it takes a lot of collaboration. So
Sure.
Anyway, but well, this is awesome. I think that we should do more, and I think I'm going to need your guidance on the other things we should talk about.
Sure.
But I would love to do another couple shows with you.
Yeah, happy to.
And let's educate people. And that's the goal here. Is I want to educate as many people as I can, wherever they're at in the country, so that we can save them the heartache and the headache of bad decisions and dealing with people that are just not on the up and up out there. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of them out there, and quite frankly, I'm never going to extinguish it.
Right.
And if I did, I would be out of business.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, It would be great, but the reality is that you just got to be careful out there. I mean, it just happens all the time. I get people that email me. They submit complaints on the website, and it fascinates me that it still happens. And here's the other thing. I will tell you this. I always find that I say, if people would just stop falling for this stuff, and we wouldn't have these problems.
Right.
It's like I have people that will call me. Like I had somebody call me recently, and they were like, "Listen, I watched your video, and man, I just wanted to know this guy." Came to my house, he knocked on my door, and he said he had extra asphalt, and he said that he could pave my driveway for a really good deal, and I said yes, and he got halfway finished with it, and then he came up to me and he said, I accidentally misquoted you, that was only to do half the driveway, and then the guy came in, this is a true story, and then he said, well, how much to do the rest? And he was going to like another $8,000, and I didn't know what to do, and so then the guy said, I told him to go ahead and do it, and then I went to go write him a check. Oh, I don't take checks, and I don't take credit cards. I had to give him cash, and I mean, it's crazy the stuff that happens out there, and it's like one little thing at a time leads to this big problem. And I think that if people just said, hey, listen, if for instance, if you go to a car dealership, I don't know what the worst thing that they can do in the very out of the gates, but I guess I could set a rule and say, hey, if I go to a car dealership and the first question out of their mouth is well, what kind of payment are you looking to get into? I might just be like, okay, I'm done. I'm out of here. I don't know. Maybe that's not the one. My point is,
Right.
Some people have to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah.
They have to be able to go, okay, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole where in the end I end up with a bad situation.
Yep. Yeah.
So I would love to have you back on and let's talk about, and I'm sure you've probably got a few things in your head that you would love to help educate people on and
totally. I mean, we didn't get into trade-ins, which I can do as a broker, and we can talk about that. How I reverse engineer the whole equation and giving people some tips on, financing and what to expect from that standpoint, what's going on with the market.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of things we can
a
cover.
lot of stuff. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you're not very far away. Well, you kind of are, but you like driving.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
You can drive to the other side of town. Right. So that's awesome, man. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me, Patrick.
Yeah, this is awesome. I really do appreciate it. I think this will probably be our top show. I actually do. Cool. I think it's an important thing to cover. So
yeah, totally.
Again, thanks a million for being here. Alex Kenyon with HM Brown and Associates.
Yep. hmbrown.com to check out our company as well. hmbrown.com.
Yep. And you're a broker.
Yep.
And so that's awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome, man. We'll see you
Appreciate
next time.
All righty.
All
Awesome.
right.